Hi friends, it's Lauren Taylor. Thanks for joining me in my craft room today. I'm grateful to have you here for my Spellbinders July 2024 Club Kit video. Here's a look at all the products I received from Spellbinders. These are gifted. I have the clear stamp and coordinating die of the month, the BetterPress plate of the month, the standard embossing folder. I also received the stitching dies and the small die set. So I've done a lot of prep for this video. I know it's quite long, but you guys said you like longer videos, so I wanted to include all three of my Spellbinders Club cards together today for you. I started with die cutting the stitching die of the month out of some pale pink cardstock. I love non-traditional colors for Christmas, so we're leaning really hard into that for this video today. So I'm starting with adding a little bit of ink to my die cut pieces. What I love about the stitching die set is that you do not have to die cut the stitching designs. You could just die cut this out of some standard cardstock and color it up how you'd like. You don't have to do anything to the dies either. When I work on my second card, you'll see that I don't add any shading to the dies. They look so great on their own. But because this is such a large die, I just wanted to give it a little bit of dimension. So I'm taking some Rosy Cheeks Simon Early Create ink and a blending brush, and I'm just adding some ink to the bow. So anywhere where I think there would be a little bit of shadow. So these are the two, or I should say three ribbon pieces, those two little rectangles and this long skinny rectangle. So I'm adding it to where I think there would be shadow. I'm adding it to the bottom of the loops of my bow and kind of more towards the top for the tail, since that would be coming out from underneath the bow. That's where I think the shadow would be. And then I'm also inking up these little pieces that you can add to the bow so it looks like there's some depth where the bow kind of loops. So I'm darkening these up the most out of all the pieces because I really want it to look like there is some shadow when I glue these on later down the road in this video. So I'll finally ink up this last little piece. I'm so sorry, I'm such an aggressive blender that my camera shakes because I shake pretty much my whole craft room when I ink blend. So I'll go ahead and clean up the ink off my desk, and I'm just going to show you how I stitched one of the pieces, and then I just repeat that same style of stitching for all the rest. But I'm using some diamond, I believe that's how you say it, diamond, DMC, a metallic thread, and this is the light silver. I really love pink, teal, and silver together for Christmas, so I'm going to have lots of silver details for this card. And the stitching die, they're like etch die, so there's like an impression, like a score line. That's the word I'm looking for. There's like a slight score, an impression of where you can follow to add your stitching. So from the front, I'm just making lines up and down all of the dies. And in the back, I'm actually going to the dots or the openings that are right next to each other. So there's actually not a lot of thread on the back for this design, which I'm kind of grateful for. It's mostly all on the front. Once I finish filling in the bow with the thread, I'll go ahead and add a double knot. It takes me a little longer than I'd like to admit for this piece for some reason, so I'm going to skip over that. And I just make a simple double knot on the back side of my die cut. I'll go ahead and trim off the excess thread, and then I'm just going to grab some Scotch tape, some clear tape, and I'm just going to tape my thread in place. It's not quite as taut as I would like it on the back. There's some wiggle room, and I don't want my thread to look loose, like all loosey-goosey on the front. So I'm just going to add some tape and just pull that thread on the back a little more taut. You definitely don't have to do this. This is me just being nitpicky. So that's just how I make sure my thread stays in place. I do everything on the back side so it still looks very pretty on the front. Here you can see how fun that thread looks on this bow loop, and I'll go ahead and finish threading all of my pieces. Now I started my embossed background when I realized I never hit record again, so I do apologize, but I'm going to use an A2 piece of teal cardstock, and I'm going to run it through my Spellbinders machine with the standard embossing folder, and then I took some silver lining lunar paste, and I just used my finger to add a little bit of shine and shimmer to the background. So you can see here, I just put it on my finger, and I'm lightly rubbing it onto the embossed design. This is the, I would guess I would say front of the design. The back of the design is also very beautiful, but I'm just using these raised edges to add in that lunar paste as well as along the edge of the panel. So after I finished adding all of those details, I went and washed my hands so I don't get silver everywhere. And I have a top folding A2 card base out of some sturdy white cardstock that I will use for this card. Actually, all my cards are top folding A2 cards today. I wanted to make sure that lunar paste was nice and dry, so I'm just using the lowest setting. I have a heat embossing tool with 2 settings, so I use the lower one just to put some heat and air onto that background. I added some strong sticky adhesive tape to the back of my panel and glued it down to my A2 card base. And this is when I realized that I didn't trim my card base correctly, that it's a little short. It's going to be okay. I can see here that my ribbon will still fit just fine. So I'm going to grab my large scissors and trim off that excess card base. That's why I always glue my card bases, or the panels to my card bases, starting from the scored side. So that way, if it is not the same size, I can just trim off anything from the bottom or the sides. So I'm going to use my grid here on my glass board. This is a magnetic board, so I have these magnets in place so I can make sure I get my long, large ribbon here to be centered onto my card base. I'm using some tape runner on the back so I can, it's actually a dotted repositionable, but it does end up gluing permanent over time. So that way I can make sure that this ribbon was centered and straight. If it wasn't, I could peel it up and try again, but I did a pretty good job the first time. And it does stick out a teeny tiny bit off the top and bottom, but that's okay because my card is now slightly smaller than an A2. So now I'm thinking of how I'm going to layer my ribbon. I want to add some dimension, so I'm going to grab my liquid glue as well as foam adhesive to glue everything together. So I'm going to start with some thin, this is 1mm thick foam squares, and I'm going to add 4 foam squares, doing my best to avoid the openings and the holes from where I have the stitching design. I'm going to add 4 of those little squares, and I'll go ahead and glue the loops of the ribbon to the back side of this center piece. So it's kind of like where the knot is in the ribbon. So I'll go ahead and add those together, making sure that my inky parts of my bow are on the bottom. And then I went ahead and add foam adhesive to the edges of my bow. And I'm going to add foam adhesive to the bottom of the bow tails. So that way the foam adhesive, the dimension is going to be on the ribbon tails where it kind of comes to the end, and then the edges of my bow. So in order to do that, I'm just lightly setting my bow on my card so I have an idea of where I need to place the tails, and I'm adding liquid adhesive to the parts that will tuck under the bow. So you can see I'm just using it as a guide, and then I love my magnets for helping me keep die cuts in place until my adhesive dries, and then I repeat the same thing with the other tail on the other side of the bow. Once I'm happy with that, I'll go ahead and add some adhesive, liquid adhesive to the center of my bow and glue that in place. So now I have lots of fun dimension on the edges of my bow and the bottom of my bow, and this time I use 2mm foam adhesive. I'm going to use the same tape runner to glue in the little pieces that look like the ribbon going around the gift horizontally instead of vertically. I like that these are little smaller pieces that just tuck perfectly behind the bow. And that finishes off my present design. Oh, nope, I'm gonna add in the little dark pieces of my bow where it looks like it's looping. So I'm using liquid adhesive to glue them in place. I know it feels kind of weird that it's supposed to be the inside of the bow, but I'm adding it as a top layer. But like I said, adding the shading I think gives that effect that it's like it's more behind, if that makes sense. There's some dimension there. But anyway, that will finish off putting my stitch bow onto my standard embossing folder background, but I want to add a sentiment. So I'm grabbing the clear stamp and die of the month, and I'm going to do some embossing. So I have some white cardstock in my little Misty here, and I'm using some embossing ink to ink up my sentiments. And I went ahead and stamped it twice, and I used an impression tool or the Stampendable to really make sure there was a good stamp. I'm going to use silver embossing powder because I'm really leaning into that silver. I used it on the thread. I used it as the details to add some shine to the embossed background. So I wanted to use it as well for my sentiment. So I'm going to do Delivering Christmas Wishes, which I think is perfect since my background is a gift. And once I had enough powder on my sentiments, I use my heat gun at the highest setting to melt that embossing powder down, and it just looks really pretty. I love this kind of chrome colored embossing powder. I'm getting out my little scout. I like just saying that. Getting out my scout, and I'm going to use the coordinating dies to die cut Delivering and the rectangle shaped for Christmas Wishes. Now the die is intended to fit all of the different sentiments, so of course it's going to be as long as the longest sentiment, but I didn't use the longest sentiment for this card, so I'm just going to show you what you can do if you want that same kind of die cut edge around all four sides of your sentiment. So I ran it through my die cutting machine as is, and this time I'm sliding it down so it ends a lot closer to the wishes. I'll use some repositionable tape to keep that in place, and I'm going to run this through my die cutting machine. I'm not going to go all the way through because it's not necessary. I'm just adding enough pressure to where it cuts next to the wishes, and that just gives you that same kind of die cut look on all four sides, so you can have a shorter rectangle for your sentiments. Now that those are ready, I'm going to add some foam adhesive to the back of these sentiments, and I'm going to cut out how long it took me to figure out where I'm going to put it on my background. But I'm using that 1mm foam squares again, completely covering the back of Delivering and the Christmas Wishes sentiment. And then I'll go ahead and get that centered towards the bottom of my card, so it looks like it's just kind of peeking out below the bow. And I really like how this turned out. I wasn't really sure where I was going to put the sentiment. I was thinking higher, but then it blocked my bow, and I was kind of sad about that. So I really like it here below the bow. So here is a close-up look of my first card. Again, I'm using the Spellbinders July 2024 Stitching Die of the Month, Standard Embossing Folder of the Month, and Sentiment, or sorry, not Sentiment, Clear Stamp and Coordinating Dies. Now, I have to admit, card number 2 is my favorite of the bunch. I did a lot of die cutting before I restarted filming using the small die of the month, and they are ice skates, or you can make boots. You don't have to add the skate part of the ice skate, and a poinsettia and different leaves and florals and berries. So a very cute die set. I did all of my die cutting out of some kind of more tealishy green cardstock, purple cardstock, and a holographic, as well as a glittery purple cardstock. And I'll talk about that more when I get to adhering everything together. But I did do that before I started filming. I trimmed down a panel of light gray cardstock and ran that through my embossing folder. This time I was able to remember to hit record, so you can see how I used my spray to moisten the cardstock and then ran that through my Spellbinders machine off camera. I flipped it over and I'm using what I would consider the back side, so it has more of deboss line instead of emboss. I don't know if I'm using that correctly, but the lines are pushed into the cardstock rather than out of the cardstock. And I used a kind of clear glitter shimmer brush marker and splattered on a bunch of shimmer. I really like the subtle shine that it has. And this panel is actually cut to 4 by 5 1/4, so slightly smaller than A2. Now I am working on gluing my pieces together, and my camera, I don't know what it is, but a lot of my purple cardstock looks gray. It is the weirdest thing. I don't know, it's just the lighting. So I know it looks like I'm putting gray berries onto my design, but they're not. They're purple. You can see when it's in the shadow that looks purple, but for some reason in the light, my cardstock looks gray. It's the weirdest thing. But anyway, I'm just going to show you. I'm not going to really talk too much here, but just follow along of how I glue all of these different pieces together. If you have any questions, just let me know in the comments and I'll do my best to explain things better. But I'm just kind of following the intended design of the berries and the bows, poinsettia, the flowers, and the skates to assemble everything together. So how did I come up with this grenishy teal and purple design? Well, my daughter actually skates and I thought it was fun. Now she does have hockey skates because she's learning to play hockey, and these are definitely more of the figure skating style skates, but that's okay. It's still really cute. And so I thought this card, it just really felt inspired by her. So I chose the colors of the old Anaheim Ducks, so that kind of purple and tealishy green color. So that's why I chose the colors for this card. Again, very non-traditional, but it still feels very wintry and very fun. So I hope that you like my take with the colors of this card. Again, it's my favorite of all of them. I just think it's fun. I love playing with non-traditional colors. So I'm having a really good time putting this card together. I know that it seems kind of quick because I do speed up my videos just a tiny bit. I go at like 1.5 speed because I'm a slower crafter than it appears. And I did do a lot of cutting in my gluing because otherwise this half-hour video would have been like 3 hours long. It took me quite a while to glue all these together. But in case you're wondering what or how I assembled everything together, I just wanted to show each kind of step, even though it is a little quicker, of how I glued everything together. Especially the skates. I wasn't really sure how the laces were to tie around, so it definitely taking my time and just looking at the picture from the die set too helped a lot, but I hope showing you here how I glued everything together just helps you if you have any questions once you get your small die of the month. Okay, so now everything is glued together. I didn't show the second skate because it was literally the same thing. But here are all of my pieces and I have my panel, and I'm going to start with kind of a rough idea of how I want to put my skates and greenery on the card. Now I wanted my skates to be a little higher, but I realized I was going to run out of room really quick with all of the different elements that I die cut to create like a bouquet coming out of the ice skates. So we're going to go with the skates a little lower on the panel. I want to have different types of dimension on the card, so I'm going to use some 2mm thick foam circles here, and I'm going to completely cover the back except for the very top of the skate. I even used a 1/8 foam strip to be the blade of the skate on the back side, so even that part has stability onto the card. So I'm holding both skates here, but that's just so I know where to place the skate that's more in the background. And then I added liquid adhesive for the other skate where it covers the back skate, and then foam adhesive where I knew it needed it because it was going to touch the background. So now I'm going to get back to kind of that jumpiness again. I'm just going to quickly show how I'm layering in the different greenery pieces. I'm just tucking them into the skates and kind of behind the skates. I just want it to look like a bouquet of Christmas floral greenery. And I'm using a mix of 1mm foam adhesive and 2mm foam adhesive and liquid adhesive as I'm adding the different elements to the background, just kind of feeling it as I go along, and where I want dimension, like these little kind of floral, or I guess they're not berries, I think they're flower buds. I wanted those to kind of pop off, these little berries to pop up, the flowers, and the leaves are really kind of what I glued down to the card base directly, as I could use my thumb to kind of curl them up too, so that way they are glued down to the card, but I can kind of make them look a little bit more dimensional by kind of curling them, or yeah, like using my fingernail, if that makes sense, to add a little bit of curve to the pieces. And it is really hot, so I'm so sorry you can see my hair every once in a while, but I have the fan next to me like blowing a full blast, so you might see my hair sneak in every once in a while depending on how close I get to my desk. I am happy with how everything is looking, so let's go ahead and get this onto a card base. Again, a top folding A2 card, and I'm going to use my sturdy adhesive to add a glue to the back of this card. Because it's an embossed background, I like using my Scotch tape runner because it's just a lot of adhesive and it sticks like real good. So now I have my background and my die cuts ready to go. I went ahead and stamped and embossed my sentiment off camera because you've already seen me do that today, but I did use VersaFine Clair in Monarch, which was a purple ink, and holographic embossing powder from Ranger, so there's a little bit of shine to the card or the sentiment in the light. I'll go ahead and add foam adhesive to the joy part of my sentiment, and I'm going to just tuck that into kind of the opening where the skate and flowers are. There's just like a little bit of open room there. And then for the strip, I added foam adhesive where it would attach to the background and liquid adhesive where it would attach to the skate. Here's a close-up look of my ice skate card. I love the purple, holographic, and green. I just think it's so fun on this really light gray background, especially with the subtle sparkle that I added as splatter on the sentiment and that super glittery poinsettia. So while I did combine a few different clubs, again for the second card, that was the clear stamp and die of the month, the small die, and the standard embossing folder, for this final card, I'm just going to use my BetterPress plate of the month on its own, do a really simple card. I love BetterPress for simple, kind of more quick and easy cards. I guess this one doesn't seem too quick and easy, but I love that BetterPress plates and that LetterPress design can make quick and easy. So I'm going to use the registration sheet that's provided because there is a cute little truck and tires that you can get lined up, which I think is so cool that that was part of the design. So I'm going to start with the truck, and I'm going to use again some non-traditional colors. I was going to do a traditional Christmas tree, but something inside me told me that I needed to do a pink tree, not a green tree. So I'm going to start with the truck. And I have the plastic registration sheet on my BetterPress. I'm using some repositionable tape to keep that in place, and I lined up the plate where it says to on that sheet. I have my piece of cotton in porcelain onto the panel, and again using some repositionable tape to keep that in place. And I'm starting with my first color, which is Cruise, which is kind of a light minty teal color, and I add the ink onto the plate in a circular motion, so the ink pad is on the plate and I'm applying it again in a circular motion. And I'm running that through my Spellbinders machine. Sorry, it's a little shaky. Don't mind that. But I just wanted to show you how easy it is just to run that through your machine. And you can see I have my truck into the cotton paper. I went ahead and pulled that off, and I added the tires, again following the areas on the registration panel. And this time I'm going to use Thunder. I was going to do a black, but I just thought since I had very pastel colors, I should use gray for the tires, and I really love that. It looks so good. So now I was going to use this panel as the background, but then I decided that I wanted to fussy cut the truck out. I really wish there was a die for it, but that's okay. So I'm just going to continue on the same panel. I'm going to use a darker teal topaz for my sentiment, which will be the back of the truck. And then I'm bringing in that garnet, which will be the pink Christmas tree, which I think is going to look so pretty. And I'll go ahead and run those through the same process, and that will finish off all of my impressions. So I'll go ahead and clean my plates and get them put back onto the storage sheet. I'm going to do the die cutting of my Deliver Cheer sentiment and my Christmas tree. My table's going to shake again in just a minute, but I went ahead and die cut those out because they have their own coordinating die, and the die is slightly smaller than the impression, so you don't have to worry about it getting lined up perfectly. There's some wiggle room there. And then some scrap piece of the cotton cardstock. I'm going to go ahead and die cut these kind of snowy details from the die set as well. So I will have all of my die cuts ready to go in my little tray, and I'll go ahead and use some of my paper snips, these tiny little scissors from Spellbinders. I know mine are green, they are gray now, but I'm going to use my favorite fussy cutting scissors to just trim around my truck. It takes a little time. I'm leaving some white around the design, but I'm just going to go ahead and take my time and fussy cut my truck out. I won't show you the whole ordeal, but once I'm done, I just think it looks so cute. I did watch my friends who did the live on the first of the month. I was so bummed that I got home from Florida that day and I just knew that it was too much on my plate to join them. So I've missed them now for June and July, but I should be back with them live for August clubs. But Carrie did such a really cool design with her truck. I need to watch it again and figure out how she did it because it looked so pretty. But if you haven't watched that yet, definitely head over to LV Handcrafted or Carrie or Sassy LLC, Sarah Liz. They were all on the live video. Okay, back to what I'm doing. So I am adding foam adhesive. This is 2mm thick, and I'm going to start with adding the back of my truck. I liked it that it was a little darker. It just, I thought, would stand up off the truck a little more. So I'm adding that so it looks like it's the back of the truck. And then I'm tucking in my Christmas tree. So that really cute pink tree. I just think this is so fun. And that will assemble my cute little Christmas truck together. I did want to add some snowy details. I'm going to use the packaging to give me some kind of insight on some ideas of where to put some of the snow. I liked the snow that was on kind of the top left of the truck, that little curved piece. So I'm going to use liquid adhesive and my tweezers to glue that in place. The smaller pieces, there's like 3 tiny pieces. I'll add those to the Christmas tree. The really long piece I'm putting on the top of the truck. So it looks like it's kind of sitting on the edge of the bed of the truck. And then there are 2 kind of longer pieces. It looks like it could be the snow that the truck is driving over, but I wanted to put it like it was on the back bumper of the truck, so just gluing those in place. Once those are all done, I will clean up my desk, and I'm going to trim a piece of mixed media cardstock, and I'm going to do this a half an inch smaller than an A2 panel. So this is 3 3/4 by 5 inches. And again, my fan is blowing full blast. I'm going to grab some Distress Oxides and blending brushes, and I'm going to add some pink and kind of tealishy mint, teal, green, blue colors to this background. So I'm using Kitsch Flamingo, Salvage Patina, and Peacock Feathers, and I'm not going to blend the pink and blue together, but I'm going to try to get them pretty close together on this background. There's a little bit of white there, but that's okay. I like this blend. And I'm going to, again, grab my tape runner and knock everything over and add my adhesive to the panel and get that glued down to my top folding A2 card. So the pink's going to be kind of what's grounding my truck. I know it's kind of weird. It actually kind of reminds me of a watermelon right now. But the pink's going to be the ground of this background. I grabbed some 1mm foam adhesive and I'm going to cut some strips to add foam adhesive to the back of my truck and get that adhered to the center, again using the pink that I ink blended on the panel as kind of what is the ground for my truck. Now the top of my tree was a little unstable, so I'm going to grab some foam adhesive and add that to the top of the tree as best as I can. Sorry it's a bit off camera, but just adding some extra foam there for stability. I already have a sentiment, so I'm just going to add a little bit of fun shine to the card. So I'm grabbing my Crystal Mix Color Essential Gems. I'm kind of running low on these. I need more. I love the opaque, kind of iridescent look of these ones. So I'm going to add them around the card. I think I do like 9 total in different sizes. 3 in the top corner, 3 on the bottom corner, and 3 small ones around the truck and tree. And that will finish off my third and final card using, again, the Spellbinders July 2024 Club Kits. I hope you enjoyed my inspiration using these club kits. You can find the different clubs down below in my description box. Let me know which card is your favorite and which club kit you are most excited about this month. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you'll click like, and if you're new here, I hope you'll subscribe and come back. As always, you can find everything I use down below in the description box. Thank you and have a wonderful day. Bye!